This is The Art of Startup War, and I am your sensei, Brian McMahon. Now, in Season 1 and 2, I got inside the minds of startup investors. In Season 3, I brought in entrepreneurs to share their startup journey. Here, in Season 4, we combine both, so you can hear investors critique the investment value proposition of individual companies. You're going to hear how investors make decisions to invest in startups, what makes a great entrepreneur, and how billion-dollar companies are built. So tune in every Tuesday, 10 a.m. on all the major platforms. You can empower your tribe by sharing the podcast, and remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave us a comment. Good morning, it's Tuesday morning, it's Brian here. You are again on The Art of Startup War. Today I have a phenomenal entrepreneur. Again, you are going to be wowed and bedazzled about how a company can start from absolutely nothing and so quickly transfer into this huge company that doesn't seem like there's anything that can stop it. And when I speak to Glen here, and he's going to come on in a second, and we're going to talk a little bit about Envision and how he's built it and some of the brave steps that he took himself to actually start this, you'll understand why I love this company. Glen, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much, Ryan.
So awesome. So look, on this show, we hit it hard, and really you got a few different folks in the listeners. You've got investors who are looking for the next thing, right? And because we all know within the investment space, it's a high risk space, but it's a damn good reward space. So we know investors that have got 10 times return. We know investors who have got 1,000 times return, and we know investors who've got 0 times return. So if you want to go for the 1,000 times, you got to understand that sometimes they're not going to make it. However, when you are going through that, you're looking for the ones that have the best opportunity of being able to get a really big return. So I loved when we first met, you were introduced to me by a company that not only did my partner invest millions of dollars into, but we are about to lead their Series A round, and we absolutely love them, 802 Secure. And he said to me, this is one of the best technologies that I have seen anywhere in the cybersecurity space over the last couple of years, bar none. Right? That was how he introduced you. So he's like, because at the beginning, because so much is coming through, I'll pass it on to one of our due diligence guys, and he's like, don't you dare. You see him yourself. The guy is brilliant. And I saw you, and we met, and we even though we with this craziness of this virus going on, we met like 3 times immediately afterwards, even though I had no time for anything, because he was right. You have an awesome product, and you have absolutely nailed a huge problem that for some godforsaken reason other people haven't been talking about. And I don't know if it's because they haven't noticed it or because they can't do it, but you managed to nail it. Can you speak a little bit about NVISNx and also what it is? Because everybody's now thinking, shoot, just tell me already.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting journey. And, it really all happened. I was a partner at Ernst & Young, and specialized specifically on data protection for intellectual property, which we believe is one of the most complex data sets in the world to both analyze and classify, because not all IP is critical. And so while we were working at another Fortune 500 client, we were asked to help this little company called Nokia, as they were in the process of being acquired by Microsoft, in which they put billions of dollars into their account, and they had a relatively short period of time to effectively complete the acquisition, do the data carve out. The problem is they didn't acquire all of Nokia. That would have been easy. And then they would have taken both all the assets and all the liabilities. However, Nokia was going to be new Nokia, the 20% that was non-Windows based, information based on Android and Symbian and other data sets. But the problem was, they had to go through over 5 petabytes of unstructured data across 13 global data centers within a relatively short period of time. And
okay, so just hang on a second. I just don't want this to go past people quickly. 13 data centers of data. Do you have, for all of us who just believe, yeah, man, it's cool, our storage and stuff, it's in the cloud. Like, we just imagine this nice fluffy area where there's loads of it, right? You look in the sky and you're like, oh my God, there's so much extra space. And it's not. Like 13 data centers, that's an enormous amount of data. I mean, how do they even know what data they have there?
Well, in some circumstances, they actually didn't. Some of their most interesting intellectual property was kind of early to market, and the original engineers that developed it were no longer with the company. So they had these dark IP data sets that they knew they had some value, but they didn't know what it looked like or where it was stored, and effectively how many files made up that composition. And we came up with an approach that I developed over decades of my experience, being a retired Navy commander and running a couple of other startups before joining Ernst and Young, and a lifetime of experiences in doing a very large number of different cybersecurity program assessments for some of the most qualified companies in the world gave me a different way to look at this, to the point that we got them what they wanted, and they were able to go through this 4.3 billion files across all the stakeholders in Nokia, then was fully accepted with all the stakeholders at Microsoft, in which they completed this without issue, without litigation, and it was a very positive outcome. And so that became one of the aha moments to say, what did we just build here? And I think this is so critical for every other company out there. And Brian, it was important to understand everybody wants to look for their most critical data, what we call the crown jewels. But going through all of that data that has been accumulated over not years, but decades, you go through a lot of junk. And I know it can be sometimes offensive, but data that has been over replicated or has been not accessed, not in years, but in decades, or data that includes trivial data set that is absolutely no value to the company, falls into what we call redundant, outdated, trivial rot. That's the chunk.
And
And so
everybody
my,
has this, right? Everybody. Like, so you're focusing on the
everybody.
larger companies, but like, even if like folks listening here, how many PowerPoint presentations have you changed one word on, and suddenly you've got 14 PowerPoint presentations? It's like PowerPoint presentation for client number 2, new logo. And then, but you did it like 14 years ago, and nobody's ever touched it since. And it's sitting in there, and it's in your file, but it's taking up a massive amount of space. So that's what you're talking about, right?
I'm talking about exactly that. And these are typically the unstructured files. Not what's in the database. That's not where you're going to typically see the massive replication of data and the cost savings. But it's all that data that has been extracted from the database, saved to the laptop, collected from other third parties, and then shared in so many different ways, both via email, via SharePoint, via every means possible. And then it's the versioning of that data, and then the fact that for a short period of time, for a week or two, there's a lot of energy and a lot of access to it. Then the file gets finalized, and then the data goes into a decay mode. All the data before that still resides, and typically everybody thinks that data is cheap, that enterprise storage is cheap. What they don't really understand, it's cheap to buy, in which, of course, year over year, the cost per gigabyte of enterprise storage goes down. What they don't fully realize, it's not cheap to own. When you have to then take that data, and sometimes junk data, and put it into relatively expensive storage, including cloud, and then put controls around it, and then have people try to manage and protect it, that's where the data hoarding becomes to a point of diminishing returns, and the actual total cost of ownership goes through the roof.
So, like,
And
what percentage are we talking here, Glenn? Like in a large company, of their data is pretty much useless.
on what we've actually seen in other Fortune 500s, it's somewhere between 50 to 80% of that data is absolutely junk. It's over
Wow.
replicated or hasn't been touched in years. And if you need a copy of it, keep one copy, not 50,000 copies of what's actually out there.
Absolutely. And so going back to the example of Nokia, not suggesting that Nokia had 9 data centers which were useless, but using that example in a normal company, 9 of those data centers would have been useless, right? They just had data which was not required for the company to be successful in the future.
Correct. And it was interesting because I really didn't have this notion of getting rid of the junk. And the executives at Nokia that was going to build new Nokia, it's like, well, why would I want to take that junk data into my own new startup and incur those unnecessary costs?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's a really great question. And so early on, we dismissed this whole notion of junk, but not only is the junk expensive, the junk actually impairs leaders to make more informed decisions and find what data to protect and what data should be
So look,
disposed of by
listen,
regulations.
I think, Glenn, on a hassle and I'm an idiot level, everybody will agree. Like, there's not a single person listening to this that's not going to say, dude, I remember I've gone down through my Explorer, looking through the 5,000 videos that I have of like my child when he was like such and such, and version 1 and 2 and 7 and 8, and all I'm looking for is one file, and I can't find it because it was badly classified, and now I got to go through all of this crap, and I've wasted half an hour and all of my creativity. So all of us, everybody, would just agree it's just a question of scaling. I'm an idiot, but we all know it, right? Now, but what about cost? Because there's kind of I don't know, a feeling that data doesn't cost that much. Are we talking about large corporations saving tens of thousands of dollars a year or more than that?
It's tens of millions, and we've
Millions.
proven this out. And Brian, here's the beauty of it all. It's an annual recurring cost avoidance in which 1 year you might save 5 or 6 million.
Wow.
Second year it might be 3 to 4 million, but year over year you're still data always decays and always gets it's hoarded, and so there's always going to be an ongoing opportunity to get rid of the junk.
So
And
we're like that old lady in Hoarders with like the shoe boxes and the pizza boxes and the cans of Coke all at our feet, and we're going, "What's the problem? We're okay. I know exactly where my slippers are."
and that's exactly it. It's one, hoarding has become an acceptable business practice. I know actually many general counsel lawyers that said keep everything forever just in case. But now the new privacy regulations coming from GDPR and
Mm.
CCPA that include the right to be forgotten. And not only do you have to delete that information from the primary repositories once the customer says delete my data, you've got to delete all of it, because if it can ever be recovered, you're no longer complying with their right, and you effectively violated their rights, and you're now open to both regulatory fines that could be as high as 4% of your annual gross revenues. That's how that's how much teeth that these regulations have.
Wow.
And so for companies like Google and Facebook, these are now multi-billion-dollar fines. So they need to get it right, and they need to have it as part of the core functionality. And these aren't just point in time assessments. So our platform effectively scans the enterprise on an ongoing basis, looking for the jewels as well as looking for the junk, and provides that level of visual transparency to the data owners so they can then be confirmed of the assets that they have and then make a logical defensible decision about what should they do next with it. Do they need to keep all of that, or should they start to protect it because it's now in places? And this is a really big thing that's going on with the coronavirus and the pandemic, with a lot of the workers now working from home. I can definitely say that some workers are using their personal computers, their home computers, to get access to corporate assets to get their jobs done because they weren't given the right tools in regards to having authorized laptops with the security embedded. But companies are still trying to enable work to get done. So now the data is even in a much more riskier position. But another thing that's happened around the coronavirus, Brian, is that a lot of companies are now experiencing a major reduction in revenues. And with that, they're asking and looking for major budget costs across the board.
No. What they're doing is what they should have been doing 3 years ago, but now they're under pressure. It's the awful thing about human nature is that we can save all this money and do all these things because a 6-year-old could tell that what you're saying should be part of normal business practice. Like you should not be part of, oh, it's a crisis. We just lost $20 million. Let's find a way to get back $2 million so we can look good to our boss. This should have been something which should have been happening every single year for forever. And it was really funny when before we met and when I spoke to Gary and I said, but Gary, what's so great about this? And he said, Brian, it's the cybersecurity solution of the century. And I'm like, I don't get it. I get how it saves from hoarding. I get how corporations can save money by doing it. I get how you can make everything streamlined so you can have better clarity and and better strategic decisions, but I don't see how it's cybersecure. And he said to me, okay, look at it like this. Now, this is coming from one of the top cybersecurity guys I know anywhere in the US. And he said, look at it like this. Right now, you've got a corporation trying to guard data which is the size of Texas, while actually 90% of that data is useless. Like they don't care if anybody gets to it. Not only that, they're better off destroying it. So they're guarding the marshlands, they're guarding the fields, they're guarding the trees, they're guarding everything. While the only thing that they want to guard is their castle. So the more data that you have in all of these different areas, the more you're actually putting yourself at risk because you don't have enough people, resources, everything to guard the places that you need. Well, if you purge the useless, terrible data that's not required and shouldn't be there, you can focus all of your efforts on making sure that the data that you really care about gets triple protection. How's that?
Now that's perfect. And Gary's a great
I kind of copied it. I'm taking glory for it. I'm copying what Gary says, but I got it. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, yeah, for crying out loud. All of these 13, 14 data centers, like, you don't need that. It's just the 4 data centers that you really care about.
Yeah, but here's the bigger thing related to the cyber. As I mentioned, I conducted cybersecurity program assessments for some of the biggest companies in the world in every industry, either highly regulated or hardly ever regulated at all. And they all shared one common aspect. They didn't know exactly what critical data looked like outside of what was regulated. So privacy data is well defined by social security numbers, credit card numbers, things of that nature. The regulations tell you what critical is. But talk to an engineer and ask them, well, what's the attributes that make those files critical IP versus just regular IP? And they can't answer the question. They couldn't tell you explicitly at the atomic level that the cyber controls need of what this critical data look like. And so if you can't do that, then critical data remains unprotected with critical tools like data loss prevention, like need to know access control, like insider threat. The first criteria is you need to tell me what critical data looks like. If you can't tell me, I can't protect it. And so these controls have had massive investments, have been adopted by almost every company in the world, and they actually work. The problem is garbage in, garbage out. Most of the duty of telling what critical data looks like was put back to the IT guys. But they don't know the data. It's not their data. So we took a completely different approach and we worked with the data owners, the engineers, the accountants, the those that are dealing in no critical data at an extreme level, but still have a problem of articulating it at a granular level. Our platform allows that level of transparency to happen so we understand what attributes make it more critical than the non-critical data.
Oh, okay.
And we
so this
simply put that into the controls.
Yeah, this is where I want to get to now. Now, you have to reduce yourself down to a 12-year-old, okay? Because the folks listening to this, even the investors, are not going to understand maybe the very high level intricacies of how it gets implemented and how it reads, whatever. So tell us what you built. I then want to go to how you built it, because this must have been hard because you had to make a decision from being in a huge company where life is cushy. I mean, life is the best. You get to go on nice holidays, you get to go to the beach, you got a pension, your life is set. And then you're moving into the startup space where you decide where nothing is set, right? Nothing is guaranteed. You just have the solution of the century, but you still have to build it. So tell us what the solution is, and then maybe bring us down the path of how you took it from just being that idea, that germ of an idea, from when you were in the Nokia project to where it is now.
Okay, perfect. So basically, our product consists of three primary functions. It connects to where the data is, whether it's in SharePoint, whether it's in email, whether it's on a file server, whether it's in OneDrive or in the Google directories. We connect to where that data is at. Then we simply pull down the data attributes that we need. We're not trying to replicate all the different repositories out there. We're simply looking at the aspects of each of those files that helps us analyze it in a meaningful and relevant way. And so we then take that information, put it into a massive NoSQL repository, and then we use so many different analytical models to slice and dice the data to tell a bigger story. The big thing is, though, Brian, we're not just taking the data, we're taking all the enrichment sources. We're taking data coming from the access logs of who has access to this data. We're taking it from the event logs from DOP. Where did that data move now that I'm monitoring? It went from point A to point B. And then if you simply look at the data with all the context around it, you can start to classify it and identify what's critical and not critical through some very simple models. And then we simply repeat that process. Once we build those models to identify and classify, find more like this. Wherever that data is at, I now know what critical data is. Find more like this to give me a complete inventory of everywhere that data sits. And then give that intelligence to all of my data protection controls so they are much more effective to the point that they're optimized. Does that help?
Wow. How hard was that to build?
Well, conceptually, it wasn't that hard to think about the concept. But Brian, we connect to everything. And so looking at all the different ways that the data connectors are out there with the APIs and SDKs, but then one of the key things is we also made it business driven of what questions the data will answer. Many companies are just pulling everything and then trying to think out later, well, what am I going to do with this data? Now they effectively become hoarders themselves and they get lost. We only pull data that goes to well-defined use cases to answer a business question on a recurring basis. But the biggest thing in which a lot of these technologies existed, however, through some of our very unique experiences of what the client actually wants and how it should work, that took quite a bit of discovery, really decades over my life experiences, to the point that we got it right, and we're seeing some clearly high demand and clear value, in which we're now making the business leaders are acting as their own data analysts
No, but
because the
like,
tool is that
how
easy.
did you build it, Glenn? Like, so listen, you're a really smart guy. You've got, high level, officer level military service. You're working in a very high level on one of the top consulting firms in the world. Like, obviously you're like ridiculously intelligent. But one thing is being super smart. Another thing is being able to build a platform that's able to go into an organization, analyze everything, and spit out not just analysis of what should be happening and what's going to happening, but actually telling them what they should delete and what they should keep and how and when. Like, how did you build that?
Yeah. So this came through experience of both being what I believe a very successful consultant and advisor to some of the biggest companies in the world. We had a chance to tell them about the thought leadership and prove it out across a broad number of industries and a broad number of different stakeholders. However, we also had this extreme benefit of having some very smart, technical, and capable and innovative developers to bring what was in my head conceptually to life. We looked at a number of different technologies in which some worked, some not so much, a number of different orders of execution, working with our customers over the years to effectively confirm that this is the right way to build it, the order of execution, and the right way to build that user experience of who should own the tools. Many of our competitors really focus on delivering these tools to IT. IT doesn't own the data, the business does, and that was a key differentiator of, of how we designed and created this platform. It first had to be a business tool before it was an IT tool.
Yeah. And how much did you spend on it, Glenn?
Oh, wow.
Millions, right?
Millions, millions, and tens of years. This is not something that anybody could have
You
gotten
didn't think
through.
of this on Tuesday and say,
Exactly.
this is awesome. Let's do this. No, this has been over a long period. How exciting. But the product is now 100% ready. It's in the market and you already have customers, right?
Correct. We got some phenomenal customers and that's the beauty of it. No matter what we think the product should do, they tell you what else they are looking for future capability. The biggest thing that we're doing, Brian, is once we give them the fundamental capabilities of being able to look at their data in every way they want to answer any question, they think of new questions that create more value of what this platform is doing for them. This is more of a business tool. Then it becomes a risk and compliance, and then ideally a cost control tool. But first and foremost, we're informing their businesses about assets they never even really understood or knew about.
And it's interesting because as a business model, it's kind of messed up in some levels because as a business model, the consumer, the customer, agrees with you 1,000%. They want to get rid of all of the terrible, excess, useless data that's sitting in there, and they want to make sure that they have you on a recurring basis to get rid of it. But at exactly the same time that they're acknowledging this disgusting, terrible, awful behavior that they don't want to have, they continue with the behavior because the business is built for that behavior to continue. So you have to be there. It's like you're almost like a guard on the front door to say, listen, at the end of every single evening, we're going to clear all this crap out of here.
And that's exactly it. And that's the beauty of having the machine learning algorithms. We're taking their business rules, their policy standards, and the key workflows of who needs to look at this before it can be defensively deleted. Sometimes legal and records retention managers need to get involved before you hit delete because there may be other matters like a legal hold or investigation that says, no, don't delete that yet. But once all those things are taken into consideration, you can do this on an ongoing basis in a way that you know that you're doing the best for the company of not being a hoarder, finding what you need when you need it, and also not increasing unnecessarily your risk and compliance efforts because you're retaining too much junk.
Okay, Glenn, so this is the part of the show in the last 2 or 3 minutes where I want you to paint a picture of what your vision of the future of the company looks like. So talk us through from where you are today to how those clients are going to increase, what expected monthly revenue that you believe that you're going to have, what investment you're looking for now, and then how that's going to grow in the future. And then what do you grow to? I mean, does this have the ability to be $1 billion company? And if so, incorporate it all here.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. And great question. So currently we've got a handful of customers, both Fortune 500 and startups, that are paying a pretty nice monthly recurring revenue for our services. We're looking to take this company to the level that we're serving the needs of at least 50% of the Fortune 500. Doing that, we will be a multi-billion-dollar company based on our annual recurring revenue and the value that we're giving to our customers. We're seeing negative churn by our current customer base in which our pricing models allows them to get in at a relatively low initial starting price. And then the more value, the more data that is in our platform, those fees increase, but they also get more value from it.
And they
So
save
they don't
money every
mind
month.
paying those fees. And they save money. And they will always save more money than the cost of our platform. And that doesn't even include the additional value of the risk and compliance. So as one of our strongest customers said, we actually spend more money doing nothing than leveraging the platform that NVISNx brings to us. So if you do nothing, it will actually cost you more money, and you'll still be exposed to the risk and compliance needs that you're still challenged to meet. But we're trying to make, one of the big things of the future, we're trying to make the business more accountable and more in control of the assets that they want to protect.
Excellent. And what do the raises look like? So everybody sees now how it's going to become a billion-dollar company, and genuinely, it doesn't seem like such a massive leap. As you know, we're not only going to work with you on the raise for the future, but I'm pretty sure my partner will be extremely interested in putting an investment into you himself, because this just doesn't seem that complicated. Sometimes it's just not that complicated, right? It's just as straightforward as it sounds. But talk to us about the raises that you're going to need, and the timing of those raises.
Excellent. So in our current seed round, we've already raised 1.5, close to 1.6 million, and we're looking to do another $1 million to close out the 2.5 million seed. From there, sometime within the next 9 to 12 months, we're going to be looking at a 5 million plus A round to help truly scale and grow the company to be a global company, in which we're already seeing interested demand coming from both Europe, China, and South America.
Great. And I'm guessing then you'll probably do a B round as well with valuations of over 100 million. My expectation would be, which should follow relatively short suit. Nothing's ever guaranteed, but that's the path that you'd look to follow, right?
That's exactly it. We think 100 million rather, in regards to the valuation within the next 2 or 3 years is very likely. And the fact that this is over a $50 billion total addressable market worldwide, the ability to get there and the need for services of what we're doing is going to be clear.
Okay, beautiful. Look, you got my vote. You got Gary's vote at 802 Secure. I'm pretty sure you'll get my partner's vote. If the VCs don't give you their vote as well, then they're idiots. And I'm looking forward to, joining you on this journey to building this up to be the monster company that it's destined to become. Glenn, can you finish, please, with sharing with everybody your email address and then also your website so folks can contact you?
Yeah, really appreciate it. Email address is Glenn with one N, GLEN.DAY at envisionx.com. EnvisionX is NVISNX.com. And the same for the URL.
Beautiful. It's been a pleasure, my friend. It's going to be continued. And that is a wrap.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for joining us. If you love the podcast, please empower your circle by sharing these stories. The Art of Startup War is brought to you by Expert Dojo. And remember, we invest in startups, $50,000 checks. Make sure you apply on our site if you are one of those great entrepreneurs looking to bring your company to the next level. As far as the Art of Startup War is concerned, we are back every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. So remember, check out the new episodes. If you want to find out what the investors think, check out season 1 or 2. But make sure you join us every single week.